working? Hope it's working. It looks like it's working. It's chopping off the top of my bald head. What in the world? Criminous. Here we go. What the hell? Hang on. Time out. Hang on. Dadgummit. There we go. I think that's got it. We'll figure it out. Good Lord. There we go. What is happening, everybody? Everybody's having a fantastic weekend. If you're watching this on a Saturday, chances are your Saturday did not go quite as well as you would hope. So, speaking of Saturdays not going quite as well as you would hope, if you guys have seen the Instagram post that I posted up a little bit earlier, it was basically me, you know, in my coveralls that I used to work on the cars, sweating through. It's one of the reasons why we're not doing this out in the shop, is because it is just too dang hot. I ain't about to get out there and start just melting in front of you. But so working on a little bit of a frustrating issue with Revlon. So I wanted to bring you guys kind of into the mix, let y'all know some of the things that can go wrong, some of the little frustrations that can pop up, and you know, hear about what you guys have had. You know, this is an open discussion tonight. There's really not a huge monologue, but I am going to talk to you a little bit about what was going on with Revlon, how everything conspired, and we'll just kind of walk through some of the steps that I've taken to try to rectify it. So anyway, let me check in with you guys real quick, and I will get to it. Slash saying, yo, what's up? Slash Mike Corleone. Michael Grove. Sorry, God, gotta put my glasses on. Where are they at? Good night. All right, Michael Grove saying, hey, Mike Corleone is in, saying, good evening, Professor Mason, got the arm flex, I like it. Himmy Head saying, hey, B, what's up, Himmy? Vlad's checking in, saying, what's up, B, got the ball guy with the shades and the flex, even better, I like it. George's in, saying, yo, and Mark is in, too, saying, hey, Professor Mason. So, here's the deal. Friday. This all basically started Friday afternoon. You know how it is when you've had just one of those weeks at work and all you really want to do is blow off a little bit of steam. And the idea was to get the car to the drag strip, get a little bit of high temperature, high whatever data, and basically just have a little bit of fun. Eat a couple of hot dogs, have a chili pie, basically destroy my diet and have a little bit of horsepower therapy. So the day before, which would have been Thursday, I decided I would change the oil, you know, give the car a little bit of a once over, and throw some gas in it and get ready to go. Well, the funny thing is that I ended up not putting gas in it Thursday night, and decided, well, I'll stop by the gas station, throw some gas in it on the way over. So on the way over, I did just that. Threw a little bit of gas in the car and started out of the gas station, and ding, there goes the lights. And of course, it's an ABS light. Now, it's relatively early. It's about 5:30 in the evening. Track doesn't go live until 7. And I thought, well, ABS thing kicks on. It's probably a wheel speed sensor. Ha, 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 my luck. You know how that stuff goes, right? So, ha, 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 my luck. Go to the auto parts store. They happen to have wheel speed sensors there. Hey, lucky me. So, get back over here, throw the wheel speed sensor in, and it doesn't take too long at all, especially if you got the skinnies, because you have all the room in the world to work back there. So, took me longer to get the car loaded up on the ramps and the tools collected than it really did to do the work. And go to fire the car up, same problem. So that's a bit of a problem, because now being yesterday, I'm in a situation where I have to be able to turn off traction control. It's stuck in street traction control. And the situation is that the sensor did not fix anything. So the trip to the track got aborted. Yay. I was looking forward to this. Keep in mind, it's rained 24 of the last 27 days down here. And all I wanted to do is go to the drag strip. Didn't happen, right? So I get the car today and, took care of some stuff around the house first and get the car up in the air and hooked up my buddy Ernesto over at Mackay Dodge and got a new hub assembly because can't just get a tone ring for these cars. Doesn't work like that. The hub is an actual unit itself. And there is no bearing, there is no anything. It's a non-serviceable part. And in this non-serviceable part, you'll find your tone ring. Lovely. So the good thing about it is that it's not too difficult. You're looking at 3 bolts to remove the actual hub from that spindle assembly, however you want to call it. Not to mention the 2 bolts to get the caliper out of the way. By the way, top tip, if you look at that picture, you'll see that I'm actually hanging the caliper by the bolts itself. Never let the caliper droop. And in this case, with the Hellcats and any of these cars that have the back fitting caliper, when you're doing work like this, you can just remount the caliper loosely, and that way it's not dangling around. So I get the new sensor on. By the way, I reset. So I actually went and picked up another new sensor also, just to make sure that, I was playing the candle at both ends here. And when I put the entire assembly together, I put the car in run and started to log it, started spinning the hub, and it didn't correct the fault. I'm going, well, this is great. So then I pulled the sensor out, checked voltage at the connector to make sure that everything was cool there. Read 12.5 volts. Said, okay, well, we've got voltage at the sensor, or voltage at the connector. That means that the sensor is getting voltage. There's no way to screw up the angle of the dangle on the sensor when you put it into the actual assembly. Looks like I'm screwed. So I put everything back together, get the caliper back on, and get the car on the ground. Then I went to the other side of the car, and this is where I started thinking ahead. I was like, well, if I check the voltage on this thing and it's something different, then obviously there's a problem. There's some type of an issue right there at the connector, or something is going on, body control module, whatever. Which again doesn't make any sense for it to only be pissed off at the left front wheel speed sensor. But here we go. Check the right side, and it's also got 12.5 volts. Interestingly enough, I was logging it, and it too was showing the fault on the right front now speed sensor. And by the way, the fault is that it thinks that the RPM of the wheel is 8,100 and something RPM, or more importantly, it thinks it's going 636 miles an hour. So the Hellcat runs good, but it ain't that good. I mean, come on. So anyway, it was back to the drawing board. So I figured I'd drive the car around, see if I could get something to reset. Reset adaptives, reset everything. Literally going through this diagnostics Christmas tree of things to try to correct along the way. Nothing has worked so far. So there's, in talking to Alex, I think he's right. There's an open circuit somewhere. We just can't figure out where that open circuit is. Could be that the couple of sensors that I got were bad. Could be that the hub that I bought is bad. Don't know, but we're going to hook it up to some machines that can do a little bit more than the HP tuner software that I have, whereas I can monitor wheel speed per tire, and which is pretty cool, except in this case, I can only monitor 3 speeds right now, or revolutions per minute, depending on how we want to look at it. Jermaine, thank you very much. Oh, damn. It said if it makes you feel better, I curved my wheel terribly today. Man, no, man, I'm sorry to hear that, brother. No, I'm just forwarding some information to you guys. This is, and one of the things too. I'm sorry to hear that. Wheel America. Um, a lot of what I do is, obviously you guys know I do a lot of my own work on these vehicles, and I try to get you guys information that is relevant to the Mopar community. In this case, this is pretty interesting, and I'm not glad that this happened, but I'm kind of glad that it happened because it challenges me in a kind of a unique way. Um, so going through the list of things to check and trying to figure out what we can do to get the thing to start acting right, it means that we'll be a step ahead when the problems like this start to mount up. So to give you guys an idea, in talking to Ernesto, he was looking into the system. These hubs, they're having to sell a lot of them. Nationwide, they're selling about 70 per week. Do the math on that. If you're selling 70 a week and you're averaging 50 weeks on point, it's about 3,500 hubs that you're selling. So there's clearly an issue. We're just trying to get ahead of what that issue could be. And if it is the hub, that's one thing and it solves the problem. But in this case, oddly enough, there was never a wheel speed sensor specific code the way that there was before. So at any rate, this is an opportunity to learn something. And if nothing else, if we can't get it sourced and it's got to go to the dealership, which I shouldn't have to, I think we can source it, then that'll be pretty cool because we'll be able to actually find out what it is that could be causing this type of a problem. And as these cars get older, guys, these are the kind of problems that are going to start cropping up. You got to remember, Revlon is an early release Hellcat. So, there's going to be some, she's going to start seeing some of the problems a little bit before some other year models would. And if this is going to be a chronic issue, then it's best to get out in front of it and know how to fix it early on. It's just that right now, can't really diagnose it because we've tried everything, at least on my end, and I've just run out of the capacity to be able to, rely on some level of technology to get us there. Again, I was able to, log the wheel speed sensor and find out what the issue was, or at least where I should say where the issue was, not what the issue was. But I will be happy to bring you guys the news as soon as we get it. So thank you again, Jermaine. I do appreciate the contribution to the cause. Let's see. See, Jordan saying, yo, Mark saying, Professor Mason, what's up? Complex saying, good evening, B. Mason, what's up, Complex? Riff saying, hey, B. Big Dave saying, what's up, King Lord God B. Cam? Yes. Somebody found me. King Lord God B. Cam, absolutely. If y'all don't know what that is, just Google it, you'll find it. My old handle on one of the old Mustang boards was Cobra 427, and I used to love the B cam because the B cam with 1.7s was just such a fun cam with, a set of, hell, it could be any of the heads on a 302, it didn't matter. But it was just a spunky ass little cam, and not quite as good as like a TFS Stage 1 with 1.7s that had a little bit better profile, a little bit better load profile than the B cam or the E cam, any of the letter cams. The F cam's pretty good, but they're all fairly lazy load profiles, even though the roller profiles are still a little bit lazy by modern standards. But man, that thing would start ripping at about 3,500 RPM, and I hurt a lot of feelings with my little B cam combinations. So anyway, but it's still limited. I mean, they sound good and all of that, and if you are a moderate to acceptable driver, you can make a fool out of some folks, even with that little sad little cam. But anyway, I had started messing with people with that B cam for a while. So anyway, that's where all of that comes from. Oh, Rich saying he was going to go to Grudge Fest at SAC today, but his Uconnect just would not turn on. Just black screen. The trick to that, two things. One, you can do a reset. So if you press the power and the two buttons, basically, you just got to do devil horns and go hit the two buttons, 12 seconds will reset it. If that doesn't do it, you have to disconnect the battery and then reconnect it. It happens to everybody at least one time. And for the life of me, I can't give you a reason for it. They'll flake out and then they come back and they seem to be in pretty decent shape. So pretty weird stuff. Thanks again for the contribution, Jermaine. Appreciate it. Sambo's asking, what is your opinion on 180 thermostats? Are they not really helpful because the cooling system dictates the temps that they want to be? No, that is not 100% accurate, but it's not 100% false either because you're kind of onto something. So Reich, it's R-E-I-S-C-H-E is how you spell that. Reich makes a thermostat that is a 170 thermostat. If you're going to run a cooler thermostat, that's probably the way that I would go because you're going to have to run a tune to deal with the PO 126 code, I think is what it is, or PO 128. Either way, you're going to have to be able to account for that in the tune. Basically, you're just going to kill the code that the car is not getting up to proper temperature. Now, that being said, you will be hard pressed to really see a big difference unless you're at the drag strip and you are just trying to keep like a consistent run database going for yourself. It's going to be hard really to see what the difference is. The thermostat, by the way, that you can run that will kind of bring everything down. It'll bring your knock sensitivity down also when you run those lower thermostats. It doesn't necessarily pick up power, but it keeps the car a little bit more consistent. Would be one of the 190 whatever variants. I think there's a 190. There's also a 195. Either way, they're the exact same thermostat. It's just how they're rated. I don't know. Maybe they're rated at different altitudes. But at any rate, in practice, they basically work identically. And those typically will not need a tune. But anything like a 180 or a 170, you will eventually need to get a tune for those. No doubt about it. But I mean, I wouldn't run, honestly, I mean, it's just kind of part of the car ownership protocol. If you've got a tune, you need to have that thermostat in the car. And also, too, you would have to have the fans adjusted for it, or it really wouldn't matter. And so what you were correct in saying that the cooling system is just going to do what it's going to do. Well, that's true if the fans won't come on when the car is sitting in traffic. Thermostat opens, water circulating through the radiator, but it's not being cooled until the fans kick on, and then, it starts cooling the water. Or starts dragging air, I should say. It begins the thermal transfer at that point, but it really won't make a difference. Again, in practice, without a tune, really none of the thermostats are going to do a whole lot of good. And the 190 just kind of works as it's kind of a stopgap measure, really, for heat. Hilton Mode saying, what up, B? What up, Hilton? He's asking, do you think it matters what season you get your car dyno tuned? Actually, it does. Summer, hot, humid versus winter, cool, dry. I mean to get my SP tuned in a few months ago, but life got in the way, hot, humid in Florida now. So here's the thing. This is where dyno, let me back up. If your tuner speaks fluent Mopar, I'm like Zen with Mopar, then it really won't matter because the tunes that they're used to playing with, that's going to be more or less a copy paste type of a tune. There's not a lot that you have to worry about, mainly in terms of engine tuning or anything like that. There's just kind of a set of timing values that most guys are rolling with. There's a set fuel value that most guys are running with. So in that respect, no, it won't make a difference. Spark modifiers like hot spark table, cold spark table, things like that are all basically universal. You're just going to change it based on what that altitude and what the environment will typically allow. In other words, you're going to not let it yank as much timing when it gets hot. You'll, maybe add a little bit of timing when it's cold, but not by too much. Mainly because NA, the 392s just don't respond to a lot of timing, but they typically like fuel. Transmission tuning, none of that's going to change. And part of transmission tuning is subjective anyway, so that's non-seasonal specific. However, what does throw the number off on the dyno is when the car is run in real hot temperatures and you're dipping into your hot spark table and it's pulling timing. Even with a correction factor, you're correcting the car down, but you're correcting it down as the car has a lower timing value in general. So if you dyno your car and it's cold outside, you will have an artificially higher, potentially, an artificially higher corrected number. Even though you've chopped a lot of power out of it, you're running at a more efficient or a higher timing value. So does it matter when you get it tuned? Not really, not at this stage of the game, because again, most reputable Mopar tuners know what tune they're going to run in your car. But it will make a difference as far as the number. And again, don't worry about the number with the car on the dyno. And then a lot of guys will go, well, I had it dynoed 6 months ago and I'm going to dyno again on the same dyno. So it's the same dyno, so it must be consistent. It won't be consistent. There's no way for it to be consistent. And that's one of the reasons why. So in other words, you dyno your car when it's super hot and then dyno your car when it's super cold. You may see if a 6 or 8 horsepower swing in the corrected number. And again, that's the reason why. You're running an artificially low, or at least consummate to what you would normally have, timing value when it's hot. So that's the reason why those things come up. Just don't worry about the number, because the numbers are going to vary anyway. Himmy's saying, on a different front, the 2022 Nissan 400Z will debut August 17th. Looking forward to it. And the Nismo version. Dude, look, I got to tell you, man, y'all know that I have had this kind of a schoolgirl crush on the new Supra for a while. I don't know that I would ever get one, but I really like that car. And I have been side-eyeing that 400Z now for a while, and we'll see. I mean, the Nismo version is really going to be where it's at. I'm hoping that, we're going to start seeing real numbers out of that thing, like 450 or something like that. It would be really neat to see how that car would stand up against the Supra just in general. But from what we've seen of it so far, that car does look pretty. I don't think that it's as good looking as the Supra, but we haven't really seen the final product. And right now, Supra is the girl that I'm kind of looking at. But I know about that 400. I've seen her walking the hallways, so we'll see how that works. Skids is saying, hey, be glad to see you on tonight. Arthur Wall saying, what's up, B? Glad to see you in. Both got the bald guy with the shades and the flex. I like it. Tux is in. Hey, buddy, how you doing? Rick is asking, has anybody else had problems with the Uconnect after the battery died? I haven't had any issues with the Uconnect after a dead battery, but I have had issues with the Uconnect. It's hard to explain. I haven't figured out a way to make it glitch. So if that makes any sense, but I haven't I personally haven't. Somebody else may have. I haven't. Slash is asking if I know what Mills is running. Ashley Mills is running with her Turbo Challenger. She never posts the times. She doesn't post the times because Ashley does run some grudge racing with that car. So I can tell you this, the car's fast. They're still getting it kind of narrowed down, but the girl can drive the wheels off of that thing. She is no joke. Don't let that Don't let the way that she talks and the way that she'll smile at you make you think that she ain't going to turn around and bite your head off, because she will. So, but yeah, I will withhold the information that I know, and I can tell you this: she's probably running faster than what I know anyway. So, knowing her, I guarantee she is. Donald saying, hello, B. Mason. What's up, man? Talk about old school. I'm picking up a 67 Cornet. No way. Awesome. Two-door hardtop body style. Very nice. 440 soon. For cleaning up some property. No engine or trans. Sitting since 88. Nice. Hit me up on Instagram, man. I want to see that thing. He had saying the Uconnect screen on his 18 Scat Pack had a delamination issue and the thing flipped out. Happened at the dragster. By the way, dealer replaced it, no problem. Said it was common for the 18 cars and trucks. Weird. Ripped is saying that his cat never seems to go above 185 with the 180 thermostat. That's correct. Actually, what you might want to do is check, data log it. What's funny is that it'll show 185 on the highway, and it may be a true 185. I can tell you that with the Reich, what a few of us have found out is that the actual temperature could be 175, but it'll still show 185 on the gauge cluster. But when you data log it, it's actually 175. I don't know why it does that. Dodges do some weird stuff. I figure if a gauge is saying something, it's going to be what that something is, and it is not. I think it's more inferred. Let's see. Sambo's saying I have a Malodon 180, and with the fan set by Jay, it'd still get up to 203, 206 regular driving in this 90+ degree heat. If there's no benefit, I'd rather run hotter, if you will, and keep small miles per gallon. So he may just not be I don't know why he would have the fans that high, but well, it might be his high speed setting is just up there. And it's kind of tough to keep these things cool when it's 90 or 95 degrees. So, yeah, no, it's, it's better than 220. I can tell you that. Cody saying, what's going on, B? What's going on, Cody? Saying, question, I got my muffler delete done on my Escape to complement my K&N drop-in filter and want to get a simple can tune. Will changing the shift points make a difference? Yes, it will. Absolutely, it will. At least trying to get some, get a little bit more performance out of it. Yeah, that's going to make more of a difference than anything else. Saying I would think that changing the shift points would give you more top speed other than the other two mods alone. It'll certainly help you stay in the power band a little bit better. Hilton said he went to his first car show today, saw Ferraris and Lambos, was blown away. Kind of crazy when you see them for the first time, I know, right? Oh, Tux is asking if there's a way to make a car be very easy to drive. Sorta. So if you have a product called a pedal commander or pedal box installed on a car with an electronic throttle, what that will do is you can make the throttle, you can make it more aggressive. You can also make it a lot less aggressive. And that's actually what I used to do with mine in my E63. I would dial it back. I would take a lot of the sensitivity out of it and just make the car a lot more chill to drive. And then when I wanted to, light somebody up, I just, put it back to normal or make it a little bit more aggressive for, just kind of cruising around and having fun. Slash is asking, without giving numbers, could Mills beat Revlon? Well, right now, with me having some jacked up wheel speed sensor issues, probably get me out of the hole. I'll put it to you like this. It would depend on the night. It would depend on the night, and I would have to make sure that I got way out in front of her. Let's see. Oh, Cody's hanging out with Rift. Let's see. Oh, Hemi Head's checking out. Have a good one. Dr. Div's checking in and say, what up, B? That Punisher cam hits on the Pro Charger car worked out well. Nice. I like it. I need to give you a call, by the way. Tomorrow. Let's see. Every car meet we have here now seems to end with some people doing donuts and then the cops come. Kind of miss the days of just chilling. Yeah, for sure. Um, yeah, I'm glad that Punisher cam worked out. I know, Jesse was looking forward to that too. Jermaine's asking if there's any benefit to revving a 5.7 past 5,700 on a stock cam. Not really. The reason why is I don't have a 5.7 dyno chart, but from y'all's point of view, the 5.7 it'll come up, and then it doesn't really carry any power, and it's not a real sharp, continuing escalating power curve. You can start to see it nose over a little bit with the cars. The trucks will have a little bit of an SRB bump, V bump, and then it'll keep coming up, but it still noses over. What ends up happening is that since the thing noses over it at about 55, your shift point really is about 55 or 57 with those cars. To carry it any further than that, you're just hemorrhaging torque on if you try to carry it further than that, and you're actually going to start losing power on the back end. The car's going to start feeling like it's nosing over, and when you shift, you're going to be on the deep downside of that torque curve, so it's double whammy on that deal. But awesome question. I'm just now popped up too for the super chat. Thank you very much, man. I appreciate it. Oh, Doc saying on these Dodgers, the 9-drive throttle driver works well. The eco mode will limit it to lazy throttle and 80% wide open throttle. My wife loves his truck on eco mode because she doesn't like the power. Yeah, there's some cool stuff out there. I'm just kind of limited in my knowledge as far as all the different brands of the signal intercept devices, and that's really what they are. It's just a signal intercept. So cool, good to know. Dr. Doe saying, talk to you then. He will not be late tonight. Cool. Yeah, I'll just I'll give you a shout tomorrow. Give me a shout tomorrow morning. Tux is saying, thanks for telling me. My mom drove a sensitive car, and she's sometimes not used to being good at driving sensitive cars. Yeah, it's going from car to car to car. Some are a little bit snappier than others. So Rick's asking a good question. How much would it help putting in a good amount of money towards suspension and bushing upgrades in the Hellcat? I would say this. It will help more getting a little bit more aggressive alignment in the rear. Just bringing them in a tad might help. I mean, my car on a sticky tire doesn't really care, if I'm being totally honest. I know some people talk about, the alignments and everything else. Maybe on the street, it'll help keep the tire a little bit more flat, the footprint, but that's really the only thing that would really help. There are guys that will swear by cradle bushings. I don't know. I mean, I haven't driven a car with a full complement of cradle bushings. The only thing that I've driven was Shalandra with the Spawn full suspension setup, which will never happen again. That was a rattly, clackly rear suspension kit that I just wasn't going to take off the car when I got rid of it. So, I mean, it was good enough, but I don't know. The factory stuff is really good, so there's that. But again, some folks swear by it. We've run a lot of 9-second passes on a bunch of stock parts, whether it's been with Demons, modified Hellcats, modified Red Eyes, you name it. I've got a 9-second pass under my belt in it, and it's all been on stock stuff. The only exception being like a diff brace or something like that. So, yeah, I mean, the first one that I see or the first person that I hear of in person that can give me some direct insight, I'll be more than happy to listen to it. But again, I just haven't really heard of anybody needing anything like that. I know that there were some folks, the real high horsepower guys might get some benefit from it, but the reality is that most of us, in the as fast as even in the mid 9s, you're just not going to see a whole lot from it. So I don't want you to spend your money if you don't have to. Oh, Doc saying he likes to retard the stock cam on the 5.7 past about 5,500, and it will carry a bit, but the torque suffers. Yeah, it'll just start to hemorrhage on the way down. Rift is saying the pedal commander will take a bit of learning on a 6-speed. Yeah. Dr. Diss, oh, the 9 drive is like $80 on eBay. Nice. It's a pretty good deal. I know the other ones are more expensive. Cody saying, thanks for the info. Love my Escape, but hate the short gears that it has. Cars are usually catching me towards the top end, so it'd be nice to have the top end. You can do that. Doc saying, all the Hellcats need the diff brace. Yeah, I would tend to probably agree with that. I like mine, and I know that there's other versions of the Performance out now, the per number 4 Mance brand, but I like mine. It seems to be doing pretty good. So far, anyway. Riff saying, first things I got were one-piece drive shaft and a diff brace and some sticky Mickeys. Very good. Someone's saying control arms, upper and lower trailing arms, and in his 08B, and he doesn't wheel hop at all. A lot of that, man, give yourself a little bit of credit. Don't just give it all to the parts that you got, buddy. A lot of that has to do with you running the right tire pressure in those tires. What I see... So a lot of guys have asked about wheel hop. What about wheel hop? Most of the time, the guys are running too low of air pressure. And what happens is that the actual tire will cup. Use a piece of paper. I know it's kind of a hard way to show you, but so you want your tire to be flat, and when you underinflate them, they'll cup. And so just the outsides of that tire are going to be contacting the road, and as they load, you'll get a little bit more of that contact, so it'll try to hook, but it kind of can't, and it spins, but then it tries to hook again. So running the right amount of air pressure in the tire will actually keep it from wheel hopping a lot more than just the sum of all the rest of the parts. So keep it up, man. You're doing a good job. Saying that too can't be the sticky tire, coming from Dr. Diff for sure. Hilton is asking about throwing Edelbrock E-Force on his Ram. Do I think he should beef up his tires from 275 to 305? If you've got a rim that'll work with them, yeah, absolutely. But if you don't, then it won't really make much of a difference in terms of traction. We're saying the shops around here really push the suspension upgrades after you start modding it. I mean, yeah, I can see that. It's not a bad thing to do. I've always been a big proponent of building the vehicle from the back to the front. Y'all know that, but in this case, I mean, this LX platform is pretty good. And again, we've been running mid-9s for a while with these setups and not really having too many issues. And I really don't have too many issues with mine on the street in general. So, just kind of for what it's worth. But again, I don't try to cheat pressure down. I'll typically run 28 to 30 on the street, and that will quell a lot of the wheel hop that I've discovered at any rate. Oh, damn, I just saw this. Jermaine's asking, can I explain how a torque converter works? I can kind of explain how a torque converter works. So have you ever been making brownies, right? Whichever kind of brownies that you like. Sativa, probably the best. Anyway, when you're making brownies and you take just a single mixer and you stick that in a brownie bowl and it starts to turn the entire bowl. It's the same exact concept here. The idea behind a torque converter, it's known as a fluid coupling. And think of it like having a propeller, or in this case, a turbine propeller looking thing, inside of a case that has fluid in it. And through centrifugal force and friction, as that propeller spins inside of that case, it starts to build up pressure and it starts to build up resistance with the actual case itself. And that's what starts everything moving. At some point, the twisting and the speed of the impeller the case will have no because there's other geometric things in there that the fluid is pushing against as well, will have no other choice but to be locked in and be turning. And at that point, that viscous fluid is non-compressible. And so it's like having a locked unit or a very small amount of slip unit. And now that is an extremely, like, that's like a 90,000 foot view of how a torque converter works, but that's in essence what it is. It is the fluid that is carrying the actual load and the power, and it's transferring it through the fluid from the engine through the case of that torque converter into the transmission, where that power is then transmitted to the rear wheels through gearing and some other magic that happens inside of automatic transmissions. Now, inside that case, that turbine, the pitch of the turbine can be changed to where it has to spin higher to reach the point where it starts to force that case to turn, and that would be a higher stall converter. And conversely, you have lockup converters, which at some point there is a torque converter clutch. TCC is what you'll hear guys talk about in tunes. And that torque converter clutch will be solenoid driven, and it locks up, and it's basically like having a clutch in a manual transmission car, for lack of a better way of putting it, come together, and it mechanically locks the torque converter to the engines. Best way I can explain it. So there's different types of torque converters, but that is in essence a torque converter, just a real broad brush version of how those things work. And it always has blown my mind. Torque converters are held on to the flex plate. It's a flex plate is what is a flywheel to a manual transmission car. That's flex plate to an automatic. Basically the same thing, just a lot lighter weight. But they're held on with these little bolts, and it always used to crack me up, like, how do those bolts not just rip right off of a flex plate? Anyway, I don't know. I've actually broken flex plates. So I guess for me, that was actually the first expensive thing that I ever did, is I ripped the flex plate completely in half on my Jeep. So if you're going to do it, baby, do it right. Cody's asking, if you do a burnout, would the tire pressure raise because of the heat? It absolutely does. You can actually raise it by about a pound, if not a little bit more, maybe a pound and a half on your burnout. And if you have slicks, it can raise it by a couple of pounds. Sambo's saying tire pressure is an art. Man, I've been experimenting for years. I run 29 on my Turos. I've pattern tested tires a lot. And if you ever wonder what a pattern test, it's exactly what it sounds like. You get the car out, roll into the throttle pretty hard in first gear, and let it go through first and second as it's doing its burnout, and then come back around and literally take a look at the pattern that it leaves on the ground. If you've got 2 strips per tire, then it is underinflated, and you'll see that cup very clearly when you pattern test those tires. It's actually an important thing to do. It's an excuse to light your tires up, but don't burn them up in the process. Just do enough to get a pattern down. If you see a dark patch in the middle with it kind of feathering out lighter on the outside, then obviously they're overinflated. The idea is to have a nice flat representation of a spinning tire tread on the ground. That's what you're looking for in general. Drag strip, you may go a little bit less than that, but when you go a little bit less, you're working more of a wrinkle wall. You're not getting more traction because you're somehow or another getting more of a footprint on the ground. You're allowing the tire to absorb a little bit more power on the launch to make launching the car a little bit easier. It's a misnomer. Guys think that less air pressure is more traction. It's not necessarily like that, especially not like that with a radial tire. With a bias ply, yeah, but on the drag strip, you want to run as much pressure as you possibly can without overinflating or overspinning the tire, because that's, you take away rolling resistance and the car's going to go faster. 8-Speed RT saying, I hit 12 with the stock 5.7. I like it. Justice Slick, video posted, very nice. Got the arm flex. I like it. Rift is asking, what's a 9 drive? Dr. Diff's going to have to get on that. It's like a pedal commander. Dr. Div saying, off subject, but how do you feel about a 216, 220, 550, 550 lift for an LS53, or do you think a 4.8 or a 6.0 would be better? I've got everything to do this LS swap, but looking for an engine. Cam's a little small, man. I mean, the smallest LS cam, even for a 4.8, I would probably stick to like the 220, like the 220, 224, 220, 226 for a 4.8. Keep it kind of tight on like a 112 so it makes torque. And, intake center line of about 108 and, or 109 really in this case, go 109 and, lift somewhere in like the 575 to 580 range. I wouldn't limit myself unless you just got the cam laying around. That'd be a fun cam in a 4.8. It'd have really good street manners, provided that the lobe separation angle is, not in a weird zone. I mean, as long as it's like 112 to 114, you'll be fine. I'll tell you what, that'd be a fun setup in a 4.8 in a Jeep, something along those lines. And if you wanted to boost it, you'd have really high boost response with that. I was just trying to think on displacement. Yeah, that cam is way too small for anything other than a 4.8. Again, 5.3, I wouldn't put anything less than a 220, 222, something along those lines in a 5.3. On the LS side. Now, for a Hemi, that's not a bad little cam. Provided it's got a nice tight lobe separation angle. Because that's basically stock 5.7 Hemi duration, or I should say stock 6.4-ish duration numbers. Doc Div saying, I explained a torque converter is 2 fans, 1 powered and 1 not. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of hard to envision the air thing. A lot of guys are, you can imagine a fluid being whipped around, but it's the exact same thing. I mean, technically air is, this is a fluid, so it's the same thing. We're saying, I noticed that manual cars have more wheel hop than automatic. That is true, and that's usually because of how people will drive the manuals also. Sam was saying, poly bushings are your friend. Dr. Div saying it's just a cheap pedal commander. True that. Brandon's checking in saying, what up? Just joined the live. Nice. Randy's checking in from Tennessee. I like it. What's up, buddy? Rip is asking, what do you think about using screws instead of an actual beadlock wheel? Well, they've been doing it forever. So, it's not... nowadays, you really don't need it. And especially with radials, unless you're getting really deep into like the low nines, mid to high eights, you don't really need them, honestly. But on a bias ply, you can definitely get away with them. And if you're obviously you'd want to run. Some guys will swear by running a tube in the bias ply. Okay, fine. The beadlocks are a little heavy, I will admit. But I've known guys that ran screws for years, never had any problems with them. Dr. Diz said small, it's because it's his daily. Yep. Like I say, as long as it's here we go. Riff saying, I know it's done a lot back in the 50s and 60s. It was done a lot back in the nows. Dr. Diz saying, this is on a 111 lobe separation angle on a 109. Yeah, there you go. 109 takes center line. Order the stage 3 low lift because I'm trying to keep it as a daily and it's going in as S10. Yeah, it's perfect. That's exactly what you'd be looking for. 111 lobe separation angle. It'll be a fun little cam, and 109 intake center line. Boom. Yeah, exactly what I would have put together for you. So good deal. Anthony's asking, how long will they make the current Challenger? The agreement between FCA, now Stellantis, and Mercedes-Benz is that the LX platform will be run now through 2025. The original, the original agreement was 15 through 19, I think, and then they extended it and they went to 15 through 23. No, I'm sorry, it was going to be the 2020 model year, then it went to 23, and then the labor agreement was extended to 2025. So that's where we're at right now. Anything can happen though, and anything can change, but that's my understanding of the way that it was explained to me. So Tux is asking if I've ever driven the 1500 TRX or a Trackhawk. I've driven a few Trackhawks, actually. Trackhawks are a freaking riot. I have not driven the TRX, though. I've seen one. The sucker was running mid-12s in the heat. Good car. Hey, and say, what up, Mason? For the Scat 6.4, do you like the HRT Stage 2 comp cam, or would you consider a custom grind? HRT Stage 2. Damn, that's a familiar looking grind. Anyway, it's a good cam for over-the-counter guys. It's got a wider lobe separation angle to make tuning a little bit easier for those that don't speak fluent Mopar, but you would be much better served with a custom grind cam. Through the mid-range, bottom-end torque is just going to be better with a custom grind cam. And through somebody that knows how to tune, Doc Diff is a good example of this. You get around somebody with experience with a bit more of a custom grind cam that not only needs somebody that speaks fluent Mopar to get it to work, but that can back it up with experience and not just, have a one or two under their belt. That's going to be where you're going to get the best results. So anyway, that's what I would say to you about that. Stick with custom grind and you'll be a lot happier. Again, I don't think there's nothing wrong with the Stage 2. It's a good cam. And if I were, putting together something and I didn't have access, or I needed somebody with a remote tuning or a can to tune, it would be an easy cam for somebody to put together a tune for. So, but if you know what you're doing, all of them are basically just variants of volumetric efficiency tables, really. So, Michael's saying, considering a twin turbo build on my Scat, what cam do you recommend? Custom grind, obviously, it's going to depend on, look, when it comes to camshafts, a lot of it's going to depend on what your end goal is. I can't recommend a camshaft if you're, for example, I would recommend a different camshaft if your idea was to say, look, this build, we're going to limit this thing to 9 pounds of boost. It's got to be daily drivable. I just want that extra hit. I want this thing to kick on the highway. That cam is going to look different than a cam if you were to say, man, we're going to be going all out with this thing. I'm going to be running 9 pounds of boost, but I want to make as much power as I possibly can make on 9 pounds of boost. By the way, if you think that's what you want, believe me when I tell you, you don't, because 9 pounds of boost with one cam is not 9 pounds of boost with another cam. When you start putting a big cam together with boost, what you're in essence doing is it's like a big bleed off valve when you start really getting into overlaps and things like that with turbos. So 9 pound, let's say you've got a 5.7 liter engine or 6.4 or whatever size engine, it doesn't matter. And you have a cam profile that looks like, 220, 226, intake center line of 108, and, lift, it doesn't matter. 600 lift on both sides. that cam at 9 pounds of boost is going to be a fun, streetable cam that would make good power all over the place, and off throttle response is going to be good everywhere. And you will have a certain amount of flow that's going to be involved at 9 pounds of boost that would be associated with that cam. If you were to then say, okay, I'm going to put together a cam that is 238 on the intake side, 252 on the exhaust side, intake center line of 112 with 113 degree lobe separation angle and 625 lift on both sides. First of all, you got to have pistons to make that work. Second of all, that thing on 9 pounds of boost to feed, because duration is just a mouth, okay? It's a baby bird. It's all it is. When you're talking about boost, you're feeding the mouth. The bigger the duration, the bigger the mouth that it is that you got to feed. And you got to have a lot of turbo flow to feed that cam versus that first cam that I was talking about. That second cam is going to be rowdy, and it's not going to build, it's not going to have really good boost response. It's going to be a little bit lazy coming into boost, but when it starts to build up and when it makes power, it will have a significantly higher airflow than that other cam. So it's going to be rowdy, hard to tune. It's going to constantly be trying to run eights in the quarter mile when you're just trying to drive down the street to, get a beer and a box of smokes, right? So you got to be real careful with, what cam do you get? What setup do you get? And what fuel are you going to be running? That's another big one. So my thing is this: any cam that works well, naturally aspirated, any cam that you like naturally aspirated is going to be a very good turbo cam. I would probably argue that anything in the mid to very low 200 range in terms of intake duration is going to be fine. In fact, I probably wouldn't go, honestly, for a street setup, I wouldn't go above 222. Don't have to. The exhaust side, it doesn't matter. I mean, you're going to be on E85. I'll usually open up the exhaust a little bit more on duration just because there's more fuel mass involved to get rid of. But, for the most part, a 220, 230, basically a joker cam, would be a pretty fun cam for a turbo build. It'd be streetable, sound good. It's fun. What more can you ask for? It's not going to be the top of the line, take everybody's money kind of a cam, but you ain't getting there from here with one of these platforms unless you're hitting it with boost and the dope and all the build and everything else. So, it just, what's your breakover point? Where are you starting? Where are you stopping this madness? And that's really what you got to ask coming into it. So. Dr. Diff, good point. I just literally got through saying it, what your end goal is. Thank you, buddy. I appreciate that. Let's see. Rift is asking, have I seen anything about the compound turbo setup on the Hellcat by Hellion? Seems like it would be a complicated setup to run. So back in the day, there was a lot with the GT500s. A lot of this got started for the street with those guys. And the big deal was, you can make 600 horsepower to the rear wheels with your GT500 with a compound setup. But the problem is that same engine, if you were to just run the turbo or turbos, would have made, instead of 600, it would have made 650, right? So yes, you can make good power with that setup using the positive displacement supercharger to really ramp up and spool those turbos up. That's the idea anyway. And then relying on the power of the turbo on the big end to carry power. The problem is that you've got a hot discharge temperature from the turbo feeding what is in essence the most inefficient supercharger for high speed, high RPM power production. So you have hot air going into a heat pump that is then going to heat it even more, regardless of how much cooling there is. and feed that downstream. And that's one of the issues. Guys are finding out that, yeah, you can make more power, but they were more sensitive to knock, especially on pump gas. So just know that coming into it. They're not bad, they're just not as efficient. It's kind of like getting the worst of both worlds. It's funny how it still ends up working out, but it really is kind of the worst of both worlds. You get all of the heat of the positive displacement supercharger and none of the actual top end rush of the turbo, because so for you guys, if you're new to the channel, where the shop is or where the studio is, I should say, is very near Velocito. And there's been a lot of folks going out and making some hits. So yeah, you may hear that from time to time. Sometimes guys will drive by and pipe up the saying hi, those that know where the studio is. So anyway, you may hear that from time to time. I've actually had guys that were listening or watching the show or had the show playing on their way to Velocito, so they'd pass by here and wop wop wop, and they'd hear me talking about them. So anyway, hopefully that answers the question. Sorry, it didn't really totally answer the question. So the problem is that with compound, you get, I was talking about the worst of both worlds, the heat, and then the turbos are really good at being efficient at wide open throttle. And the idea is that turbos are the ultimate cheat code. They don't care about heat. In fact, the more heat, the better. But they don't care about heat. They don't care about humidity. They don't care about altitude. They just don't care. They will keep filling the cylinder full of air pressure until they run out of capacity, or they're forced to run out of capacity through a wastegate. Just boost limited at that point. But up until that point, they will keep feeding that engine. And if they never open a wastegate, they will keep feeding the engine if it wants it or not. So you lose part of that efficiency up top by being shackled to the inertial losses of spinning these two big ass rotors in a positive displacement supercharger. It's basically weighing it down, if you will, the turbos. So where a compound setup works really well is in steady state operation, where you've got like a large engine, diesel engine that's running a generator or something like that. And maintaining steady boost pressure is something that's important. You can run a centrifugal supercharger, it could be centrifugal supercharger, but a lot of times it's a root style blower with turbos attached to it. And you'll also see that a lot on two-stroke diesels, which is really where it got all of its pub, because a two-stroke diesel has to have that supercharger for it to just simply move air. And that's what it's there to do. So anyway, hopefully that gets you kind of closer to that. That answer. It's good, but it's Sambo's saying, is it true the 6.1 cam is 221, 225, 571, 557? I want to put a 218, 226, 566. Won't it lose power? Well, the 6.1 cam might be that big. The 6.4, the 571 and 551 is correct. Actually, I believe the 6.1 cam is less duration than that. I think it's 215 or 216. It's been a while since I've even messed with that cam. It's actually a little bit of an aggressive cam though, because it's on a 114 lobe separation angle if the old noggin is doing its trick. So the 218, 226, it all depends on the actual lobe shape. But I probably wouldn't go with a 218 on a 6.1 anyway though. Again, I would be looking for something, because 6.1 is a little bit more of a traditional setup. The heads don't flow near as well as a 6.4, which is not necessarily a bad thing. You can just simply get away with more cam. Something along the lines of a 224, 230 cam would be pretty fun for a 6.4. And I would set that on a, like a 109 with, 112, 113 degree lobe separation angle. It'd sound rowdy, but it would actually be a whole lot of fun. Rip is saying, seems like running a turbo and a supercharger setup at the same time can be bad. Again, the only issue is that it's more of a heat management thing. Also, how are you going to package it? That's the other issue that you would run into. Brandon's asking, you going for a ride in Racer X's turbo? Not yet, but I'm sure I will be. Oh, Anthony's saying, thanks. I'm late to the game to buy my new one. Yeah, I hear you as far as being late to the game. I've kind of been in this side of it for a while. There's still stuff I don't know. I cannot wait to get you guys the answer as to what the hell is going on with Revlon, man. That car, and it's running so good too. Velocicito, I buzzed that thing up to the car is just running so good. It just sucks that it's having that ABS issue because, God, that car is just running so good. I love driving that car. Mark's asking, at what point do you recommend getting a trans tune? Stock, I recommend it. I don't have any major mods done to my RT, but I'm curious as to when you'd recommend one. Maybe after a specific mod is done. And then Sambo saying, Mark, just do it, it's worth it. So no, the thing about a trans tune is that you guys, if you're kind of new to the channel, with Revlon, the idea was to go out and try to run, 1020s with basically a stock boost Hellcat on 93 octane. Like, how fast can we get a stock boost Hellcat to go on 93 octane? And so I was playing around with the car on just the stock unlocked ECU, and she ended up doing a little bit better than I think she should have done. But with the 309 gear and everything else that's been done to the car, believe it or not, the biggest improvement in ET wasn't the engine side of the tune, it was the transmission side of the tune. And that was true for Shalandra too, which was my SRT 392. That car, after Alex had done the initial tune and I was really heavily working on trans tuning at the time. Hell, that car ended up running 1130s at about 118 and a half at full weight, and that car's clone went 1120s with a drag pack and some weight reduction. So, granted, that's in obnoxious air, but still, the point is, the engine tune, it helped, but the engine tune was really more or less there to support the trans tune. We're saying agree. Dr. Diff saying trans tune is the best. I'd suggest tuning in trans over the engine every day, although they are hand in hand. Yet you've got to, they are married for sure. Tux is asking if a 4Runner can last forever depending on the mileage. It depends on the amount of preventative maintenance that you've been giving it. Let's see. Tux is asking if you've got a car with really high mileage, does it make any sense? I think this is what you're trying to get at. Does it make any sense to put a new engine in it to make it last longer? Sorta. A lot of times it would, for a car like that, for a cash car, something that you're not making payments on or anything like that, if it gets to that point, a lot of times it's cheaper, I should say, to scrap the car that you have and just get something else, just get another cash type car. Mainly because the expense of sourcing a new engine can be pretty close to the cost of a new car. So at that price point. So just know that going into it. It just depends on where you're at in terms of budget and what the car is worth. Oh, Rip saying the only reason why I was looking at the compound turbo setup for the Hellcat is for the ease of changing boost. So here, well, it's super easy. If you've got a Metco pulley, you can just swap pulleys. I mean, it doesn't get any easier than that. Aside from, the compound setup where you just kind of, dial a boost. But you got to remember that boost with a compound system is still hot boost. It's not, boost like what you're used to. Again, I really wouldn't recommend it. And by the way, nobody is running compound boost and setting any records. If it was that great, you would see guys like Z, Brian Sanders, and the like moving over to those types of systems, and they're just not. You got 7-second cars that don't want to have anything to do with a compound boost system, and for good reason. I mean, you can get a lot of performance out of just the 2.4. In fact, Brian Sanders' car was running mid-8s with the stock supercharger. It's a Hellcat supercharger and nitrous. So, it's there if you want it. You just got to go out and fetch it. And I really wouldn't go out and spend the tens of thousands of dollars on a compound system, and then really just get walked on by somebody with just a heavily and properly sorted single power adder car. Light's checking in saying good evening, Sir Mason. Good evening, Light. Doc saying nice to be a part of this wonderful car community and this great chat. Thank you, B, for all you do for us, Mopar guys. Thank you, brother. I'm out for the night. Please, everyone, sign the RPM Act. Keep from killing our cars. Actually, the RPM Act was not tabled this year. That was a 2019 deal. They did not table it for 2020. But get out there, let people know anyway. Tell them to bring it back. Riff's checking out with Doc. Queasy saying, what's good, B? What's up, Queasy? Saying, making the move next year, wanted a 5.0, but think I'm going to go Accord Coupe V6 instead. They've been growing on me. Yeah. You guys aren't familiar with those cars. They're actually really nice to drive. Voodoo Truck is checking and saying 2010 Challenger RT Classic 6-speed manual with Barton shifter in metallic black. Man, I love it. It's funny that you mention a car, that exact car. That is actually the exact. Okay, so I test drove in one day, and this was in 2010. I test drove a white RT Classic. It was white with red livery. And I drove, that was the automatic. And I test drove a black, metallic black RT Classic with silver livery, 6-speed manual car. And I loved it. So, yep, I know the car well. I drove it, and lots of fun to drive. Ripped is saying, I do have a Metco pulley, so they are easy to change. I just need multiple tunes. Yeah, you're gonna be needing it. Oh, Brandon saying, oh, the RPM Act was reintroduced. Oh, cool. Okay. Good deal then. Yeah, the letter I got back saying they were saying that it was not tabled. So if they did reintroduce it, good, because I did sign mine. For sure. So keep signing them, guys. Sambo saying, what do you think the ideal coolant temps for power are? It depends on really who you ask. I mean, and it depends on how the engine is built, but I'm assuming that you are going to be talking about a street engine with street tolerances and the like. Typically on the dyno, this is on a chassis dyno, meaning the engine is in the car and the car is on rollers. If you make the hit at about 165 degrees, that's about when you get one of the cleaner numbers out of the car. But that has to do with some other things. It's not just the coolant temperature, it's transmission temperature is the other side. You've got to have the trans temp up as well. So, there's some parts of the tune that have some things to do with that, but just without boring you to tears, about 165 is where you want to be. Now, if you're on an engine dyno, and those clowns run those things at 130 degrees, which is nice. I mean, the piston is nice, and it hasn't totally expanded in the cylinder, and it's running loose, and it will make a better number. So, it is what it is. The typical back-to-back number that I like to see is around 175 degrees. It's a little bit more realistic, and if you do two pulls back to back, usually you end up at about 185 degrees. So I'll make the initial hit at like 170 or 175, and then the second hit will be around 185 or 190. And usually there's not that big of a difference between the two on a back-to-back hit. So just giving you an idea. So when you ask like what's the best, the best numbers I've seen at that temperature, but that temperature is only there for a split second now. It does not really exist in the real world. Even if you have a thermostat that keeps the temperature down, like in those areas, you'll have other things that are going to be affected that engine in terms of heat. So just know that that's kind of where we try to target those temperatures. Dad's Garage, thank you very much, man. Saying thanks, B, for sharing the knowledge every week. We all much appreciate it. Thank you, brother. I appreciate the kindness, man. Thank you. And again, Brandon, thanks for letting us know. And Doc saying that the RPM Act was reintroduced. That's good news. And somebody's saying, yeah, I'm a bolt-on NA61. Fun car, man. I like the 6.1s a lot. Rich saying, should I sign the RPM Act again if it came back out? Yeah, if it's a different link, man, sign it for sure. Brandon saying, I've signed it about 15 times or so. Sweet. Never mind, it's terrible. Yeah, I hear you. Good job, Tux. Brandon said, EPA just busted a Honda shop earlier this week, got them for 18 grand. Nice. Ernesto saying, would that be problem fixed? Unfortunately not, brother. Trying to figure out where there's got to be an open circuit somewhere. Either, and here's the funny thing, either the two speed sensors that I put in the car are bad, the hub is bad, or both the hub and the speed sensors are bad. But here's the weird thing. I've checked voltage at the connector on both the left, which is the side that's affected, the driver's side, and the right, which is unaffected, and they both have the same voltage at the connector. I've tried clearing codes and driving the car, driving it slow, driving it really fast. I've tried resetting everything, pulling fuses, the whole bit. I am literally capped out in terms of technology, although I can monitor the RPM and the speed of that tire, or that hub, I should say. I cannot monitor the speed of that hub, although it does give a value. It's as though the computer is seeing a disconnected sensor, but there's nothing wrong with the sensor. So we're going to take a look at it tomorrow. I may try to get another sensor and see if it works, but I'm not getting any codes. Here's the weird thing. I'm not getting any codes for a sensor or anything else. It's just service ABS and service traction control, primarily service ABS system. So if we can't get it sorted out tomorrow, though, I will be giving you a shout, because I may need you to make an appointment for me to bring that car up to the dealership. Just don't let them try to fool with my tune. Dad's Garage saying, maybe being inside tonight, maybe you won't get attacked by the bugs. So here's the thing. It is so hot and humid. If you saw that Instagram picture I posted with me working on Revlon, I am sweating through my coveralls. I mean, it is crazy hot. And I don't want y'all watching me melt in front of you. So, let's see. Oh, Dr. Doe talking about the Shaw's Brent at PFI Speed took an $18,000 plus hit for selling piggybacks online. Damn. And Jeremy at Faster Proms both got hit with big fines. Don't know if it's made it to Texas or not yet. Got to keep them from this. Yep, for sure. Um, let's see. Oh, Tux is going to be working on some artwork. Very nice. Oh, Ernesto saying we can talk later about the hub and see what I can do if you need to return it. Man, I ain't even about to try to take that thing off the car. If it turns out to be a bad hub, then we'll work it out that way. But I don't think it's going to be a bad hub. I think that there's going to be something in the there's going to be something somewhere that's creating the issue. But I hope it's not a bad hub. But if the thing ends up coming off, I'll let you know. But like I was saying, man, keep them in stock, brother, because at this rate, I'm probably going to need another one if it is a hub failure for the passenger side. And as this problem and as these cars get older, that problem could begin to propagate. So, but yeah, and for any of you guys that run into issues with tone rings on a Hellcat, they are non-serviceable units inside of that thing. So, but anyway, it's, oh God, this is driving me nuts. The thing is, what sucks about it is that it runs so good. I mean, the car is flawless with how it's running. Anyway, Brandon's asked me thoughts on the new Trimix TKX. I haven't messed with it. I have no idea on that. Doc's asking if I can scan the whole car. You can come out this way tomorrow. The big scanner will do all that. Bet you have a wheel speed sensor irrationality code. We'll only come this way tomorrow. Here's the funny, I can't do it. Actually, Alex and I are going to be working on it tomorrow, possibly. But I may be able to swing out sometime in the week if we can't get it figured out, or if the machine doesn't work. So here's the thing. The code, I can't get a wheel speed sensor code on the car the way that I was able to with the passenger side. There was and just give me a shout tomorrow, man. We'll talk about it. I'm still trying to work through some of the issues. One of them, and I don't have the piece of paper in front. Do I have a piece of paper in front of me? It was a correlation issue between transmission and speed sensor, which may have been just I don't think it didn't throw a CEL basically. And the other one was basically along the lines, like it was something about it might have been an irrational code. P wasn't 325. That's on a different thing. It was shit. I can't remember. I have to get them to you tomorrow. But anyway, long story short, replace the speed sensor. No love, but it was kind of a hit or miss thing because it didn't throw the code. Replace the hub. Still no love. Now I can monitor through HP tuners the RPM of each wheel or the mile per hour of each wheel also. And when there is no sensor plugged in, this is on the right side, it will show a default number of RPM, 8,000 something RPM, basically translates to 6,000 or 636 miles per hour. But the second you plug that sensor back in, and just kind of flip the hub over, it immediately picks up on the fact that it's got everything's cool, and it will start showing real mile per hour. On my driver's side, it is as though the sensor is just unplugged and it's not able to see what's going on with the hub, the tone ring, or whatever. And again, this is with a brand new hub and after using a couple of speed sensors. Both connectors on both sides, I checked voltage on both of them, and they're both showing 12.5 volts. So can't figure out what the problem is. It's kind of a weird thing. So that's basically where we're at. I've got a left front speed sensor, tone ring, whatever, about to drop people's elbow on it, but and it sucks too, man, because that car, I was out playing around in it, and I was like, okay, well, maybe it just needs to reset. I tried resetting everything. I tried resetting so I've literally gone down the entire tree. I've reset the ABS. I have I've reset all adaptives. I've done everything, and it just, so there's some open circuit, and we'll just have to try to figure it out. But it's really important to get this solved, not just because it's my car and I want it solved, but as these cars age, these types of failures are going to start to happen even more and more. Just think of it like a bell curve. You're starting off, kind of soft with these failures, but the more time goes by, it's going to really start to ramp up. And so we've got to get out ahead of these problems and find out what they are, so that they're easily easily diagnosed. I don't know how easy it's going to be to fix it, but they're easier to say, oh yeah, if it's doing that and you're not throwing it's only throwing an ABS and you're not throwing an actual code, then this is the problem you're going to run into. Whoa, Moto X, man. Texas barbecue beer and burnouts, not necessarily in that order. Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. I'll probably on top of that tomorrow, because I've been craving my chicken taters, which y'all know me, I love them. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And that will absolutely go to the barbecue fund tomorrow. Very cool, brother. Thank you very much. Tough to beat Texas barbecue. Tough to beat Central Texas style barbecue. That's the good stuff. Good old brisket. Getting me hungry. I am starving actually right now. But I will, hey, Doc, I'll give you a shout, or give me a shout tomorrow, brother. Sam was saying, is it worth getting a newer 5.7 intake manifold on a 6.1? I tried this big hump of aluminum on that car that heats up like crazy. It's heavy as hell. Dr. Div saying, let's put it on a real scanner. Don't be using that little bitch ass HP tuners. Is it worth getting a newer 5.7 intake on a 6.1? I tell you what, man. It, in terms of performance, will be very, very similar to your 6.1 manifold, but it might be worth it. I've never heard of anybody doing it, and I think it's a really good idea. I sent, and it's been a while back, I actually had sent Dr. Diff a link to a guy that was testing on a 5.7 or a 6.1, Doc? I can't remember now. Anyway, I was like, dude, this is pretty funny, for everybody that's been asking about, because usually it's the other way around. I want to put a 6.1 intake on my, 5.7. I'm going, no, don't do it. It's a bad idea. So, anyway, this guy was doing intake testing, and believe it or not, 5.7 intake did better than the 6.1. Now, it didn't, we're not talking about numbers where, it would just up and run away from a 6.1 manifold. And truth be told, that 5.7 intake ain't winning a beauty contest anytime soon. But it did perform extremely well, and it is a known strong performing manifold. And when you open them up a little bit, give them a little bit of room to breathe, especially on that throat, if you're going to be trying to spin more RPM out of them, they do pretty well. Doctor is saying, when are y'all going to be there? I'll roll out there. Wouldn't mind to see Alex. I don't know yet. I've got some stuff to take care of around the house. So I probably get up there around 11, maybe 12-ish, somewhere in there. And again, Moto X, brother, thank you very much for that kindness, man. I do appreciate it. Callus is asking, is adding a single turbo to a 392 necessarily going to be softer on the engine than a twin turbo? No. In this case, boost is boost, brother. It will spool up a single quicker than a twin turbo, kind of, sort of, maybe ish. But no, it is as near as it does not make a difference, one versus the next. Twin turbo, the reason why you run twin turbos is to run two significantly smaller turbos to either mitigate back pressure in the system, or if you want two small turbos to spool up really quickly. Typically, if you're going to run a big turbo, you want all 8 cylinders feeding it. And that's going to allow a little bit more efficiency in some situations. But no, and again, in this situation, it don't matter. Boost is boost. And as long as you are feeding it with enough fuel, it's not going to matter. Tux is checking in with Mrs. Mason. She is doing really well. First day of the summer. She's been real aggressive with stuff around the house, which is awesome. She's a lot of things that we've both been wanting to get done for a bit. So, Dad's Garage is asking, at what drag strip do I race? I race at Houston Raceway Park. Brandon's saying, depends on how big that turbo is. So, what most guys, when it comes to turbos and turbo sizing and things like that, what most guys will get wrong is they'll have a tendency to try to, I'm just going to go with the biggest turbo, or I'm going to go with a small turbo because it's going to spool up quicker. The problem is that you don't leave yourself enough growth, or you get too big of a turbo and it's real lazy to spool up. The idea is that if you get a turbo that's, going to cap out at about, 800 to 1,000 horsepower to the crank, not to the rear wheels, but to the crank. That's going to get you, 650 to 800 to the rear wheels. That is normally for a V8 application. That size of a turbo is going to be pretty good at being nice and drivable. It'll make a lot of power. It'll come on early, so you at least get a chance to enjoy it. And once you're on the spring, it'll carry power just fine at whatever boost level you want. Really fun for burning up tires and things like that, doing burnouts for distance. That's really the setup that you're going to want to go. And if I were to ever LS swap Sierra, that's kind of what I would do. It would just be pretty much garden variety, 5.3, cheap turbo, just something that will, once it loads up, just don't, like a 354 or a 323 gear, something that when it loads up, it just smokes the tires for days. That's really what that type of a setup is good for. If you want to go drag racing, you want to build big power with a turbo setup, obviously in that case, bigger for the most part is going to be better, but you're going to have some RPM to back it up too. Best to get up around 7,000 or 8,000 RPM. Brandon saying, in his experience, turbos are a constant pain in the ass. Better to have a TBS or a Senti blower. The thing is modern turbos with modern electronics are pretty good. But the tried and true method of a centrifugal supercharger is kind of hard to beat. The only downside to a centrifugal supercharger is, number one, turbos are out there. And if you've got a package that will conveniently manage a turbo install, then you would probably go turbos before you go centrifugal supercharger. Centrifugal superchargers are fun for racing, but are good for racing because the power is a lot more manageable in that respect. Where turbos can be a little bit light switchy. So, especially once you start getting into real big boost numbers. Oh, Dad say, been there, been about 12 years ago. Nice. It's a lot better now than what it was back then, by the way. I have been racing at that drag strip for, since 1996, actually. So, Randy's saying, oh, brother, not bragging. Well, maybe a little, but I have got my big green egg and brisket dialed in like butter. Nice. I've got a buddy of mine that I mean, just swears to the altar of the big green egg, man. And I tell you what, it's no joke. He can grill like a pro with that thing. Um, Brand safe for street use. For going full race, and turbo's where it's at. So the big issue that I have really with turbos is true on, for racing, they're really good. And really, it's the only way to go if you're racing. It is absolutely the most efficient way to make power. With little to no effect on normal drivability typically. Obviously the lag is going to be there, but once it comes on, I mean, you'll know why people talk about turbos being cheat codes. And again, at altitude, it's the only way to fly. But yeah, for street use, big turbos can be a little bit annoying, really, with just how they come on. Now, we'll say that modern technology has softened a lot of the issues, but that guys used to have with turbos. But man, there's just something about it. See, here's the problem with turbos. You're just away from just hauling ass, right? But you're also just away from exploding your wallet. So, one thing I like about turbos is that it's easier on the rotating assembly itself. And the reason why it's easier is you don't have the inertial drag on the snout of your crank and the bearings on the front of your engine the way that you do with obviously anything that's crank driven. And you don't have the vibrations or anything else like that could be, again, adding to a harmonic issue with your rotating assembly. So there's that. Obviously, a lot less parasitic loss, but it's not like it's free power. There is still parasitic loss. It's just not as much as you would have with a positive displacement supercharger and to a lesser extent a centrifugal supercharger. But you figure, I'll give you an idea. So let's say we're talking about an engine that makes 1,000 horsepower because the math is easy to play with. For an engine that's making 1,000 horsepower, a turbo is going to consume about 100 horsepower to make that 1,000 horsepower that we're talking about. So that is your parasitic loss, roughly 10%. You'll see numbers like 12, you'll see numbers like 8, which is like, okay, whatever. The walking around number is typically 10 to 12%. For a centrifugal supercharger to make that same 1,000 horsepower, you're looking at about 14% to 15 to 18% in terms of parasitic loss. This is well documented in the aviation industry. Back in the late 19 teens, early 1920s, centrifugal superchargers, turbochargers were primarily the way to add atmosphere to an engine flying at altitude. You notice I didn't mention anything about a positive displacement supercharger. The reason for that is just the weight of the damn thing is so high when you compare it to a centrifugal supercharger or turbo. You just can't get away from the fact that you've got this gigantic case there that's got also, it's been filled with these big rotors that are spinning in there. But at any rate, when you start talking about positive displacement superchargers, an efficient positive displacement supercharger will consume on that 1,000 horsepower engine, it can be as high as 180 to 200 horsepower to turn that supercharger. 200 would be like a true Roots supercharger, like twin lobe on each side. And a twin screw would get really close to, but not better than, a good centrifugal supercharger. But again, you're still paying a weight penalty. So turbocharger around 10%. You can just kind of work with that as you're walking around number. Centrifugal supercharger on average is going to be 15%, which keep in mind is 50% less or 50% more power to drive that supercharger. So 10% versus 15%, that 5% represents 50% more parasitic loss. And then, of course, again, you start getting the twin screw superchargers, the positive displacement, you're not going to be better than 15%. Normally, it's like 18%. And I know that, like on the Hellcats, for example, the IHI supercharger in the Hellcat, I believe, memory serves me correctly, that thing draws 120 horsepower to turn to make the 700 horsepower that it's making. And I'm pretty sure if that's the case, then the 2.7 in the red eye is probably like at 140, 150 if you look at the rear wheel horsepower numbers that are generated. So anyway, that's when you're talking about the performance differences and the performance gap between all of the different boosting applications, taken out of account the electric superchargers and other which could be an electric turbo or an electric like an e-torque type drive system. When you break it down in those terms, it becomes real apparent why you don't see positive displacement superchargers on big rigs, and why you also don't see centrifugal superchargers on big rigs. They're just not efficient enough. Only the turbo offers a solution to making power that is not only efficient, but cost effective, easier to package, and all of that, once you build a package around your power adder. So that's why turbos are always on turbo diesels. It's not supercharged diesel. And even if it is a two-stroke diesel and it has a positive displacement supercharger, that positive displacement supercharger, again, is just there to move air. If there is some boost, it's just a fringe benefit. It is not why that contraption is there. That's what your turbochargers are for in that application. See Detroit diesel compound turbocharger system, that type of thing. This is also why, I can really bore you to tears, a lot of aviation stuff, but the turbocharger, if you wanted something to really go fast at high altitude, you would have to have a turbocharger. A supercharger will only carry you so far because of all the parasitic losses. Even with twin speed, dual stage supercharging, you can only make so much power before you really literally run out of breath. Where a turbo, again, it will seriously keep making boost until you pop it. So, or you just run out of compressor capability, which is what happens at real high altitude. Hey, Bobby, thank you very much. Saying he pulled the trigger on his SRT Challenger, got the Magnuson 6 pounds of boost. Nice. Your buddy Racer X says will be safe for both you guys. Awesome. Thanks for the help. Absolutely. So, yeah, the 6 pounds of boost on a Maggie, that'll be a fun little car. And not only will it be safe with the right tune, it'll be safe. It'll just be a lot of fun to drive. So good job, my friend. Congratulations. Cheers. Dr. Pepper heading your way. Let's see. The kids checking in saying, what's up? Oh, Dr. Diff's posting up that article that I sent over. Yeah, I think that's the one it was. Saying my intake article is one of those two, both good reads also. Okay, saying now I'm definitely going to be checking out. Good night to you, brother. Give me a holler when you get up and about tomorrow. If I don't answer, it just means that I'm doing stuff around the casa. Once I get in the road, though, I'll be able to give you a shout. Dr. Diff saying Whipple 2.9 on a 5.7 Ram weighs 86 pounds. That's light. That's the Whipple, though. All the rest of this stuff also adds weight to it. And I can tell you that the compressor and the compressor is just the thing that sits on top of the engine. So the supercharger, supercharger, all the intercooler crap, which would be your pump and your bricks and your reservoirs and all that stuff, it all adds up to about 120 something pounds in a Hellcat. I mean, it is not lightweight. So you figure it's 120 odd pounds. It takes about 120 odd horsepower to turn the thing. Yeah, it's up there. But the benefit that you get with the positive displacement supercharger is that literally you have torque on demand. It's a lot like driving an electric car at that point. You just roll into the throttle and wham, you've got torque and power. So that makes life pretty nice. Can make launching the thing a little bit difficult, but that's what they make slicks for. So if you guys got any more questions, I'll be very happy to answer them. So getting back into it though, I will absolutely be keeping you guys posted with the latest with Revlon. I know it's not sexy, guys. Look, I get it. I was the guy, dude, I've got, God, it's still gross, man. The fucking thing's still wet. I was sweating through my coveralls today working on that car, man. I mean, I'm not scared to, get in there and get dirty. You guys know that. But the main thing is that these types of problems, if you will, these are just challenges that pop up. This is, owning a hot rod, this will come up. I know a lot of you guys are going to go, yeah, but a lot of people daily drive these cars. They shouldn't have these types of problems. You know what? I wouldn't necessarily disagree with you on that, but there's a lot of reasons why parts fail. Sometimes it's just they don't get used enough. This car sits for weeks and weeks and weeks, and you would think, God, I don't know, maybe a rat got in there and ate something. I don't know yet. We're not there, but I didn't see any damage to any of the wiring harness. And again, I'm getting voltage to my connectors, so. I don't know. It's going to be fun finding this stuff out, though. And, of course, I will get that information to you guys so that if you have a very similar problem, you will be able to diagnose it and fix it so that you're not frustrated by, literally going down the street on the way to the drag strip. I got to show you guys this data log, by the way. I know we're kind of deep into this for me to be bringing this up. Let me see if I can pull a log file here. So hopefully this shows up on y'all's end. You're going to see a lot of numbers here, but that's what it looks like right now. So if you can see that, if you can see these numbers, we're looking basically at these guys right over here. You'll see that, wheel speed RPM, 8,000 something RPM, wheel speed 636 miles per hour. Yeah, that's not exactly accurate. That's what I've been fighting for the last couple of days, but we'll definitely get that sorted out. But 8,000 something RPM. I mean, that's the default number, so it's just kind of a weird one. But anyway, I'll show that to you guys again so y'all can see it. That's what we're fighting right now. I don't know why. Anyway, when I unplug the other front sensor, it shows the same number. And by the way, yes, I did check all 4 wheel speed sensors independently. I guess you could call it independently. So I had the right side up in the air and was monitoring it and kicked it and it would show mile an hour. And then I jacked the rear end up and just put the thing in drive and let the back tire spin. And it was showing mile an hour, reading mile an hour just fine at the rear end too. So it is for sure the left front wheel speed sensor. I've isolated that. Again, check voltage at the connector. Voltage is the exact same on right and left. Like how I did that right and left. It's so dyslexic. So anyway, um, and I validated the rear as well, reading mile per hour correctly. So, um, good times, no doubt about it. Um, So's asking, how well does an NA cam work with a boosted setup? It works great. I know it's not optimized at all. Would it hold up? Because I know they run smaller lobes on them. So the lobe on an NA cam can sometimes be significantly larger. In fact, most of the time it is significantly larger than a cam made for boost. It just depends on the application. You've got to remember that the bigger the cam, the more boost you've got to throw at it. And in this case, it's really not boost, it's just the more airflow, because all boost is a measurement of a restriction. So in other words, the engine couldn't make the power without this cramming of air into the engine. But that cramming of air relies on the fact that it is restricted in some way. And so when you put a big cam in a car, like you put a big NA grind in a car and then put boost on top of it, you've got to put a much more aggressive pulley ratio on that supercharger to feed that engine X amount of boost. Like say you're going for 8 pounds of boost. 8 pounds of boost on a stock cam is pretty easy to get to with a large blower pulley and whatever size supercharger crank pulley it comes with. But the minute you put that larger camshaft in the car, you're going to be making less boost. You'll go from making 8 pounds of boost to maybe 6 or 5.5, depending on the size of the cam. But you'll notice that the power may have stayed the same. It may have gone down a little bit in some cases, or it may have gone up a little bit in other cases. It just depends on the combination. Normally, it will go up because you're still flowing the same amount of air. It's just not as restricted anymore. So you're flowing the same amount of air, but it's not as restricted because the cam is allowing more air through the engine. So you make roughly the same power, but at less boost. So what's the point in that? Well, the point of that is that less boost means lower discharge temperature. It also means that there's less parasitic loss through pumping losses with that supercharger. So that's where you can pick up a little bit of efficiency there, as well as less knock. You'll have a more knock resistant combination. Now, the logical next step is to say, well, what does it make with the same amount of boost? Well, it's going to make significantly more power at that point. Significance falls in line with how much bigger or how the cam intake duration, exhaust duration, intake valve opening events are taking place. All of that's going to come into play as far as how much more power. But you put a big duration cam in the thing with a lot of pulley ratio with that supercharger, it's going to try to make a bunch of power. So that's kind of how that works out. But yeah, guys do it all the time. I mean, if you want to really wake up a stock motor, a supercharger is a good way. You get all of your stock drivability and you get a kick of power on the big end with like a centrifugal supercharger. So there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. In fact, that's kind of the way that most guys will typically go with their cars. They'll keep the less aggressive stock cam and then just boost it, because you kind of get the best of both worlds. You get a good drivable car down low when you're cruising, and if you want to stand on the gas, and you get this rush of power that's going to be somewhere around 120, 140 horsepower to the rear wheels, even with that stock cam. Oh, Brandon's asking if I've ever hit the Foxy with a small shot. No. That car used to be supercharged. It had a BD11 Powerdyne supercharger on it. If you guys are old school, you'll know exactly what a Powerdyne supercharger is. It was this really neat kit back when Vortex and ATI Pro Charger was this unsightly looking supercharger you can see on the front of these cars. Paxton ball drive superchargers. Powerdyne, and unfortunately, I don't think they make it anymore, which is a bummer, was an internal belt-driven supercharger that you didn't have to put any oiling into, and they were really neat. They were the BD10 and BD11 housings is what they were, and the BD11 was the upgraded housing. You could run about 9 or 10 pounds of boost through them. I was running 10 pounds of boost through mine, and they weren't there to make a ton of horsepower, but they had a really pretty average power curve. And that's kind of a thing that both helped them and probably hurt them, because you put that up against an S trim, and the S trim would make more horsepower, but the BD11 was quieter and it would make power everywhere. It was kind of like a cross. It was a centrifugal supercharger that had a very aggressive impeller design, which again would limit it in terms of making power on the big end, but would help it make power through the low and mid range. So where an S trim on the initial hit, boost for boost, would make 2 pounds or 3 pounds, Powerdyne would make 4 pounds or maybe even 5 pounds on the hit. So it's a fun little supercharger, but no, it never had nitrous, but it was supercharged, and it was in that shape, in that configuration for quite a long time. Dr. Doe saying, let's meet up tomorrow in Winnie at some time. I'll bring the scanner. We need to talk face to face. I've actually already got plans to be somewhere at about 11. But I can give you a shout when I get back in town, though, for sure. I'll give you a shout that afternoon, because you're gonna want to hear, what I find out. Tuxedo saying SRT stands for Street Race Technology. Yes, it does. Skids is saying, I want to do a supercharger on my 5.7A8 2020 RT Challenger. Which one should I do? I'm going to continue to daily this car, but would like to have a little fun. Man, I tell you what, again, I don't think that you could do wrong by, I don't think you can do wrong by the eForce kit, honestly. It's a really good kit. It allows you to daily drive the thing, and it would be fun all the way around. I mean, it's basically giving you 6.4 power in your 5.7, and it's 6.4 power all the time. Lucky's checking in, saying hello. Hello. Tux is asking if I've driven a Camaro. Yes, my wife's Camaro, quite a bit. I've also driven some of the newer Camaros. BB's asking a pretty good question here. How do you know when a stall converter is necessary or a good idea? You will know that a converter is necessary when you have gone to the bottom of the page in terms of looking for a camshaft, which is to say a very aggressive or a big camshaft. With modern torque converters, you'd be surprised. They actually stall up pretty good. The newer designs, the newer technology that's gone into making torque converters has actually made them a lot easier to live with. But I can tell you that it's still necessary to go to a more aggressive converter, really, if you're looking to race the car. I mean, if you're looking to take the thing to the drag strip and actively try to go for a number, then a converter may be just for you. But I will caution you, if you've never driven a vehicle with a high stall torque converter, you may be in for a little bit of a shock. And that is to say that they can be lazy under partial throttle conditions. Just like that big cam that you put in there, your converter, if it's a high stall converter, will also be lazy, and it's just compounding a bit of a problem. So what happens is that you're used to getting into the throttle and the vehicle has a certain amount of push from low RPM. And that's one of the things that makes it easy to kind of dart out in traffic, and you're just driving the thing around, you tip into the throttle and it reacts immediately. That's what a tight converter does, and that's what small-ish cams do and good head flow that these Hemis have, it works really well together to have a very good, snappy driving experience. Well, when you put a bigger cam in the car, it softens up the power curve down low. It makes it weaker down low, partial throttle. I'm not talking about wide open throttle. We're talking partial throttle. And usually, depending on the cam, can make it a little bit lazy. If you put a higher stall converter in the car, you won't get that immediate reaction. Your torque converter is absorbing that power, so the car is not going anywhere. You got to give it more throttle to get the thing going. And there are some things you can do in the tune that will wake that up, but it doesn't take away from the fact that the car will just in general be a little bit lazier to get moving. And that is what turns a lot of people away from a high stall converter, or at least, let me put it to you a different way. That's one of the reasons why guys end up selling their hot rod, is because it's not as reactive. And then when you get into the throttle, it kind of goes from it can go from Dr. Jekyll to Mr. Hyde if you've really got it wrong, or you're just driving a really racy setup on the street. It's fun, but it's fun for a grand total of, I would say about 9 months of vehicle ownership, and about because that's assuming the thing sits in the garage a lot, because it's not going to be your daily, and or 3 weeks worth of total drive time in days. It's good for about 18 to 22 days worth of actual driving thing. And then by the time you're sick of it, because, higher stall converters, create more heat. There's a lot of other things going on with them. By the time it's all said and done, you're like, damn, I really wish I would have done something a little bit less aggressive. And that's typically what happens. There's a certain ebb and flow. You can kind of feel the tide come and go with these types of combinations. So stick with the recipe with the Mopars, and you really won't need an aftermarket or anything like that converter. You can go that route if you really want something racy, but just know that once you do go that route, you are sacrificing drivability for an ET. And the truck guys know all about what I'm talking about there. Brandon saying, yes, I know Powerdyne, my man. I'm pretty sure Torque Storm is a new Powerdyne. I have 100 shot on my 89 notch 347, runs great. Yep. Dude, I tell you what, I really liked my Powerdyne. When my dad, so I gave the car to my dad for Father's Day. It's like 17 or 15 or however many hundreds of years ago. And when I found out he was going 351, I was going, shit, that blower is not long for this world. And sure enough, it wasn't. Even though the car was being set up to be a 351 with that supercharger, he ended up driving it without the supercharger and loved it. And the car really does run good. Even though it's a low compression 351, it's not really giving up a ton. I mean, shoot, it made 294 or like right at 300 horsepower on a Mustang dyno, which on a dyno jet would have been, after I got through tuning it, on a dyno jet, it would have probably put down about 320, 325. I don't think it would have touched 330, but it had been fairly close to that. So, not too shabby. Fun car though. And yeah, she is back up and rolling, by the way, too. I am in the process of, I had to basically reload the drivers because for reasons, Windows 10, I still don't understand how this works. But anyway, I had to reload the drivers for the tuning software for that car. And then I'm going to be reloading the tunes and in kind of an order. I've got, the valet tune, default tunes and things like that. And that's the latest with Foxy. She's running good, but just getting that clutch broken in. Tux is saying nitrous is really amazing to use, but is it actually a real thing? A real thing? Sure it is. Yeah, I mean, it's real. It doesn't get any more real than a chemical compound. Um, nitrous oxide. It's good stuff. Randy's saying, many years ago, I built a 340 Duster full race and late night play, 513 gears, geez, 8 for 8th mile and 3,800 stall. Pretty wild at stoplights. I can only imagine. Dude is in third gear by the time you hit 25 miles an hour. Brandon's asking if I'm using Megasquirt. No, I'm using Tweaker, STKR, old school stuff. In fact, it's funny because, you know, Glover's still working, doing his thing over there, and it works. The latest update isn't really bad at all. I mean, it's if you've ever used HP Tuners Modern and you're like retro looking back at the Tweaker, it looks a lot like what you would kind of see, and it doesn't look like HP Tuners by any stretch. I don't mean it that way, but it's familiar. So that's what I learned on, if you want to say I learned anything with it. But yeah, no, and I am absolutely hanging it on the mass air meter. I am not going in and fooling with it because I have done the flow deal and had MAFs flown and reset up my MAF curve and everything else, and I never got any better than the damn just letting it ride whatever calibrated MAF was in there. So I never got good at that, but yeah, works great. So liking it. Hey, Quick Breaks in. What's up, brother? Saying, just checking in, brother. Car ran perfect today after putting the stock intake box back on. Go figure, right? I know. Brandon's saying, oh my Lord. Brandon's saying, come this winter, he's going to go to Holly. Nice. The kid's asking, do you recommend catch cans on these modern Hemis? I like to see them on the 5.7s and the 6.4s. The Hellcats, I mean, it doesn't really make a difference. And I say I like to see them only because I'm the guy that ports manifolds, and they kind of help, but they kind of don't keep the manifolds clean. Here's the thing with a catch can. You got to remember that with a catch can, you are catching a percentage of the vapor. You're not catching all of it. And all a catch can is, it's just a can with just an in and an out, and you're flowing the oil through a nucleation site. It's just there, and I say oil, you're flowing the vapor, which is assumed to have oil and moisture and everything else along with it, through a nucleation site, which is steel wool. That's all it is, plain steel wool. The vapor basically hits the steel wool and comes out of suspension and then drops down into the pan, or drops down into the can, and then you empty the can. That's the other thing. Guys don't like to empty catch cans. We've seen catch cans so full that they're siphoning the oil out of the catch can into the intake and making the situation way worse than it ever would have been than if they just never put the catch can at all on the car. So, do I recommend them? Sorta. I've tried, how do I put this? I've tried experiments with the 392 and with my truck, with the 5.7. And out of, think of it like this, out of, I forget what it was. I got a video on the channel, like the normal videos, it's like the how to catch can thing. Anyway, I don't know. I can't remember the exact number of tanks of gas that it took for me to get to X number of miles, whatever it was switched out at. But I'll say 10, no, less than that. I'll don't know, 5 tanks of gas, all right, 100 gallons worth of fuel. In 100 gallons worth of fuel, the amount of oil that came out of that catch can would fill this Dr. Pepper lid, okay? That's about how much would come out of that. So in 100 gallons of gas. Now people will say that catch cans will capture that oil, which would be a detriment to your octane rating or whatever. I tell you something, you give me 1,000 or 100 gallons of anything and add a cap full of this to it, or a cap full of this size of whatever oil it is to that 100 gallons of gas, it's not going to do anything. It's nothing. So that got dispelled and dispatched with that pretty quickly. And now that much oil can definitely make a mess of the inside of the intake manifold over time. But to be honest with you, even the intake manifolds that I see with very high mileage aren't all that bad. I mean, they'll have a light coating on the inside of it, but it's not like it's running on oil. The other thing too, again, people tell me, I've been running a catch can on this car since day one. Really? Because intake doesn't look any different to me. You're only catching a percentage of the oil vapor that's going through there. You would have to have a daisy chain of catch cans to really weed out all of that oil. And so, obviously, if after, I don't know, I'm just going to say again, 100 gallons, and all you get is basically a cap full of oil or whatever contaminant out of it, was it really worth it? Was the cost really worth it? Was the performance really worth it? Well, don't know. But I can tell you this, I don't run a catch can on my Hellcat, and that Hellcat has run a 1012, a string of 10 teens. I've lost track or count of 10 teens that car has run. I got a time slip somewhere around here. Anyway, so there's that. I mean, you're looking at a situation where I'm not running one, and I'm running a lot of boost. Well, not a lot of boost. I'm running a lot of fuel through a stock boost Hellcat. It's not really seeing much of a difference. So anyway, is it worth it? It's good to have one if you're going to maintain it, if you're going to take care of it, if you're going to empty it. Yes, get a catch can. But in the long run, I don't know that it's going to really be that much of a power adder, but it can't hurt. So, and it keeps you involved with the car. It's a bit of a MacGuffin at that point. So yeah, do it. And again, it's going to keep you involved with the car. It's going to keep you involved with the hobby and the lifestyle, then get it for that reason, but don't get it for any specific performance claim that you may hear, because it's bullshit. So's asking, is Circle D stall converters worth the price tag? Yeah, they are. They're one of the best, absolutely the best in the industry. I've heard a lot about them, but are they like modern? So here's the thing. They're good. They're really good at what they do. You just have to make sure you're working with somebody that can help you tune with them. Jason V saying his 92 Mustang two-tone needs a paint job. Factory colors. Got a quote today for 8 to 10 grand. Is that high? Small, good reviewed body shop. It depends on the amount of work that they're doing to the car. So, it sounds high to me, man. I mean, I don't know that I would ever be that worked up about spending that amount of money on a car that's, in that price point. But for my car, I mean, I'm sure that it would be about that with body work and other things that you would have to do along the way. The going rate really, I would say $5 grand for a real quality job would be about what I would expect. You start getting into $8,000 and I'm walking out the door. Like I'm not even, I'm breezing through that door at that kind of dollar figure. Again, I don't know what all that price entails. If it's like a complete, more or less restoration, then that, depending on what it needs, it might be worth it. But, if you're pulling the motor and you're dragging it over there, they're doing, the engine compartment, they're stripping the thing of all the trim. It's including all new trim, fixing rust in the C-pillar, which is a known issue for those cars. There's so many other things that you've got to include with that, but yeah, it could definitely add up quickly, but it would have to be a lot that they're doing to add up to a number that big. But I've seen numbers in that range, so I get what you're saying. Oh, BB's asking, did you already let us know what was going on in your Instagram post with the Challenger wheel off? Yes. That was the what we opened up with. Um, so yeah, it's definitely a weird thing. But again, it's something that is going to need to, once we get it figured out, it's good information to have out there. Again, we don't know if it's a speed sensor related because we've already replaced a couple of speed sensors. We've already replaced the hub, which includes the tone ring. So I can't really find a fault there either. The computer seems to think that the sensor is disconnected. So, but I've checked both connectors on the side that I'm working on and the other side that I'm not working on, and those voltages are identical. So we're not finding a short at the connector or in the harness. So, and there's no code being pulled. So again, once I get done with the work I got to do, I'm going to be driving the car trying to force it to throw a code. So saying we paid $9,500 for a solid paint job and it's held up for 16 years now. As long as you get a good clear coat, you'll be all right. I wouldn't cheap on that though. Yeah, look, when it comes to paint jobs, again, it depends on what you're doing and it depends on basically what all extra work they're going to have to do to get it right. But it's hard to say that you don't get what you pay for, or that you do get what you pay for when it comes to paint jobs. No doubt about it. Brandon's going to give Circle D a shout. Brandon said, I'd call up Circle D and let them know what your setup is. Yeah, I mean, their job is to sell torque converters, but they don't want to have a pissed off or a bummed out customer either. So definitely good to call those guys and find out what options that they have for you, for your application. Oh, so saying that he pulled everything out and they had sandblasted it before dropping it off. It's quality work and I stand by it. It took them a good 2.5 months for it to be done. It's a 73 Duster with, nice, Monarch Orange, beautiful car. And then so saying he's going to give Circle D a shout, 32 to 35. And some of the more modern things, I know that they've got a converter that I know a few people swear by that'll actually flash pretty hard, but still retain some streetability. So, and with that, guys, we are over 2 hours, 2 hours and 16 minutes, 2 hours and 17 minutes. So I'm going to check out because I got to wake up early in the morning. But I want to thank each and every one of y'all for hanging out with me. Love each and every one of y'all. Could not do this without you. And with that, y'all stay safe out there. If you're going to send it, don't bend it. Keep your shiny side up. We will catch y'all on the next one. That is a wrap. Adios.